Thanks so much for joining us today on Feelin Good, sponsored by Warren County Community Services. I'm your host, Shelley Abrams, and as you can tell, we are not in the studio today. We are in a very special place, actually located across the street from the Channel 6 studio here in Lebanon, and this location is the Warren County Historical Museum, and we are specifically in the Harmon Museum, and we're even more specifically situated here in the gift shop, which is a very unique gift shop. And the reason that we chose this location today is partially because of our guest, Randy Overbeck, who is a retired educator and administrator for area schools here in Southwest Ohio, is now a local author. And many local authors are promoted here, and their books are here on the shelves behind us, here in the museum gift shop. So today, thank you so much, Randy, for trudging out on this day, which is a little rainy day, but it's beautiful in here. So we are happy that the museum allowed us to visit. Thanks again for joining us here on Feelin Good.
I'm really delighted to be here and glad to have a conversation with you.
Well, it's great. We have actually known, our families have known one another for years as our children went to school together here at Lebanon, and we've actually, known each other, as I say, for years. I know your wife, I know your children, and vice versa. And but most recently, I realized that Randy was now writing books, and he gave a most interesting presentation last October for the Miami University Institute of Learning and Retirement over at the VOA Learning Center in Westchester. So I thought I'd follow up that presentation with a little interview today for Feelin Good. So let's start, let's give our audience a little idea of your background and your journey to where you are today.
That'd be great. When I was in high school, I had always wanted to be a writer. I had dreams in high school, writing the next great American novel and that kind of stuff. But shortly after that, when I started college, I had the pull to serve kids as a teacher. It's kind of like, it was like God was calling me. So that's what I did. And I'm not at all sorry that I did that. I served kids for 40 years. 12 of those as a teacher and a college professor, and 28 years, as you mentioned, as an assistant superintendent or superintendent in 4 different districts in Southwest Ohio, including right here in Lebanon. Enjoyed that time immensely. Retired several years ago, and around the time that I retired, I started getting back to my original desire to write. I was very fortunate. I have been very fortunate in the past decade. 5 of my novels have been published. The novels have all won 11 national awards. 2 of the novels have become bestsellers. So I'm thrilled to kind of have a second journey in my life.
Well, that is so notable to me that you pursued writing since it was a passion of yours throughout your life. And then on top of that, you have won awards for your writing. How does that feel? And give our audience an idea of maybe the titles of the books, which are actually featured right over your shoulder here.
Yeah, so I have most recently, the more recent books. I have a trilogy of books called The Haunted Shore Mysteries, and those are I like a reviewer actually coined this, but I stole it from him. He called them a cold case murder mystery wrapped in a ghost story, served with a side of romance in a stunning resort location. So each one of the books is in fact exactly that. The first one takes place on the Eastern Shore. Second one in Cape May, New Jersey. on the beaches of Cape May, and the third one in this wonderful small town in Florida called Crystal River. And in each one is a cold case murder mystery. What's very different about my books is my protagonist is a teacher who happens to be a history teacher who would love this museum. He especially loves local history, so he gets involved in local history wherever he goes. And by doing that, he stumbles upon murders that had happened earlier with the help of some ghosts. So he's sensitive. He can see and talk to ghosts, although most of the time that gets him in trouble. So he's not really very happy about that particular ability. So those 3 books have done very well. The first 2, in fact, are the ones that became bestsellers, as I mentioned, on both Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And then this past year, I started a new series called Lessons in Peril. And the new book, Cruel Lessons, is the first in that series. And that's an amateur sleuth mystery. This particular one happens to be about drugs being sold into a high school and middle school that kids are dying from, and the schools attempt to work with the cops to find out who's behind it. So the fact that they have won those awards, I'm humbled, I'm blown away. The competition is incredibly intense for those national awards, and they've won awards like the Gold Award from Literary Titan. They've won the Thriller of the Year Award from Reader's Favorite. They won Mystery of the Year from Reader's View. So yeah, it's in a very crowded field. It's very, very difficult if you're a nobody like me to get any kind of name recognition, and that the awards help a lot.
Wow, that's an amazing journey. And where did that begin? I know you had the internal motivation to write, but how do you actually write? Do you sit down every morning, every evening, or how do you go about it?
Every writer kind of has their own. Stephen King supposedly gets up at 8 o'clock every morning. He works 12 hours every day. He doesn't see his wife or anything for that period of time. That's just not me. I work I try to work a couple of hours every day on my writing, or sometimes it's marketing, but always it's very involved. But I'm trying always to keep the juices flowing. So I'm always trying to write. I've always been a writer. So the surprising thing is that what I learned, I didn't know this, but when I became an administrator, about 30% maybe of the work I did was always writing. Okay. It wasn't this kind of writing.
Right.
It was technical writing. It was agendas and memos and newsletters and newspaper articles and all that. But it kept my wordsmithing skills fresh. So as my career waned and I got a chance to kind of start thinking about where my first love was, I went, I have stories that I think would work. And then so I started that's finding time to be able to do that. Most of the time, I'm retired now. You'd think you'd have more time, but I find even in retirement, you have to schedule the time to be able to do that, as you would probably know, because you tend to get as busy as can be. And that's the way it was from the very beginning. So I try to make sure most days, 2 to 3 hours every day, I'm working on. I have these books are out. I have another book that's with an agent, and then I'm working on one which will be number 4 in the series of the Haunted Shore Mysteries. So there's always something more. And I have another one planning for the second. I already have the outline for the next book that comes with Cruel Lessons. So always primed.
So do you work with the same publisher for all of your books?
Well, I have been very pleased that these 3 books that are in the Haunted Shore Mystery series and the new series, Cruel Lessons, have all been published by a publisher in New York called Wild Rose Press. They're a wonderful group of women. It's just kind of unique.
Oh.
Everybody, all the staff, everybody in the staff are all female. President, vice president, I know them all personally. All the editors, the artists are all women. So it's a very different kind. And they have been just wonderful to work with. It's very interesting because they lean heavily toward the romance genre, which is actually very profitable. And I'm one of 10%, 5% male that are published. All the rest of them are women. So I have lots of women friends all over the world, all over the country from this particular one. The new book, the newest book that I'm working on, that I'm hoping to find a home for, I'm trying something different. So I have a new book. I don't know. I don't know what the title is because the publisher will decide that. But the story is it would fit right in with this confines because it's a historical about the Revolutionary War.
Oh.
So not a lot of people know about this, but in the Revolutionary War, George Washington was greatly helped out by a spy group called the Culper Ring. There was a series on TV which is loosely based on the exploits of these guys, called Turn. And this was a group of 6 or 7, depending on how you count them, 6 or 7 men and 1 woman. Now this group was so secretive, and they were so concerned about keeping their names hidden that the last of those 6 men, the name of him wasn't unveiled until 2020. It took that long for historians to find out who that was.
So what you're saying right now, this is fact.
Oh, these are all facts.
These are all facts.
This part is all fact. I'll get
Okay.
to the fiction part in a minute.
Okay.
The woman, they know that there was 1 woman as part of the thing, but there is nothing of the historical record beyond a number. She was Agent 355. That's all we have for her.
Okay.
So what I have done, the fiction part is, I have invented a character, a teacher, of course, to serve in that role as the agent that helped feed information to the men and to George Washington. To do that, I had to do an immense amount of research. So this story takes place in New York City in 1776 through 1780. So there's all kinds of things going on in New York City at this time. So the reader who gets the book will find they will be jumping into the Revolutionary War from that particular perspective. And the story is told from the POV of this character, this female character. Her name is Abigail. But it's also told from the perspective of a British colonel. So they're getting dual perspective of what's happening in terms in the city and in the war and that kind of stuff. It was a lot of fun to write, and I'm really excited to see what kind of home we can find for it.
Amazing. Well, so the way in which you write, in terms of scheduling yourself, how do you know when you're done?
Well, that's
how do you make chapters? How do you know how to break it down?
Again, different authors have kind of a different approach on it.
Okay.
My goal is, if you pick up any of my books, you will almost never find a long chapter.
Okay.
A chapter is usually 5 pages, 6 pages, maybe 7 pages. And the chapter will always end with a cliffhanger to kind of get you going, I got to turn that next page.
Right.
And so when I'm writing, that is always preeminent in my mind. So my one hand is, I kind of agree with Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe said, we shouldn't be writing anything that can't be read in one sitting.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And so I try to make it so that you would sit down and read 4 pages, 6 pages, 8 pages. And I try to make it so that it starts with something that grabs you and ends with something that keeps you on a cliffhanger. Now, the cliffhanger is very general sometimes, but it's enough to do that. So as I'm writing, I'm trying to work toward that end. You ask a very good question. How do you know when you're done? Well, I often don't know. I often have to go back 2 or 3 times because I go, I don't like the way I ended that. I can do better than that. Or the description is not really as clear to the reader as I'd like it to be. I need to go back and fill in those details. I'm constantly learning. I read all the time, and I pay attention when I'm reading to other authors who do such a wonderful job of setting the scene or describing a character or moving the action forward. And I try to incorporate what I learn into what I write.
Well, I visited a book signing actually this past Saturday, and it was at an independent bookstore. And since then, we've had the discussion about independent bookstores. And I would call this, even though it's a gift shop, it does have an independent book area.
It does.
Which is very unique in terms of gift shops, and so forth. But what's your experience with getting your books into those independent bookstores?
Well, that's a very good question. My book is in several independent bookstores. In fact, I have a book signing on Saturday at Old and New Pages. Old and New Pages? New and Old Pages. I forget which way it goes. In Englewood.
Okay. Okay.
Which is an independent bookstore, pretty much like, and of course I've done book signings here at Mulberry Street Books and stuff like that. One of the reasons, so these books are all, this may be more than what your viewers want to know, but these books are all published in what's called POD format. POD format. So if you're not a major player, if you're not a James Patterson or Janet Ivanovich or Lee Child or any of those big names, and you're published in one of the, most books are published by small presses, if they're not indie published. All those books are POD, which means POD stands for print on demand. So Wild Rose Press, just to give you an example, have 500 authors, but they have 0 books in any warehouse.
Oh, okay.
So what they do is, print on demand means if this store wanted my book, they could literally contact the publisher, and in 3 days it would arrive printed and on the shelf. Okay. So what that I'm getting to answer your question. Major bookstores don't take print on demand books. So Barnes and Noble, Joseph Beth, those bookstores only take books that come from the major publishers.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yes. There are rare occasions that because they know somebody, they'll let them have their books for a short period of time, but they will not stock those other books.
Okay.
So the only place who will take those are independent bookstores. Independent bookstores will do that because they know the author and they know they can probably sell it because I'm a Lebanon author, not because of the fame of my books or anything like that. What I have been surprised, and my books are at several, as I mentioned, several independent bookstores. But I'll be honest, I've gotten a lot more traction of having my books in kind of odd places. So, for example, I have a bookstore. The second book is Crimson at Cape May. Okay, so obviously it takes place in Cape May. But I have a tourist trap. I don't know what else to call it. It's just one of the little knick-knack shops that have sold, probably 5 dozen of these copies.
Really?
And because they just keep it in there and people go, oh, there's a ghost story here. In Crystal River, there's a cafe. And the cafe has a very small shopping area, about the size of this little area. And they sell my books. And they started selling them last year and they've already sold 3 dozen.
Oh my gosh.
So I've found that many times there's much more traction of the books in places that you wouldn't think there would be.
So the Cape May book was popular in Cape May?
It's exceptionally popular in Cape May.
Okay.
And part of the reason that I always choose a real place because I want a real place, but I'm always looking for ways to market the book, and that was one of the ways that I do that.
Well, I mean, you must be doing something right, because when we were trying to schedule you for Feelin Good, a Feelin Good episode, you were very busy. And you evidently have quite a speaking schedule where different groups enjoy hearing what you're sharing with us today.
I have a very, in the past, since the pandemic, I've done more than 100 speaking engagements. None of them are really about my books, but all of them are informed by my books. Okay. So I have a set of speaking events that I call Sing, Still Go Bump in the Night. And that is actually a discussion of the role that ghosts actually do play in our culture, in our religion and in our entertainment and those kinds of things. And people really enjoy that. And then because they enjoyed that so much, I actually developed a second presentation called A Few Favorite Haunts, which I will be giving at the Lunch and Learn here in September. And that is an exploration in the history behind famous haunted places in this area, including, of course, the Golden Lamb and several places in downtown Cincinnati, the Victoria Theater, all kinds of fun stuff. So they do that. And now I have a third one, which is about the kind of the strange world of book publishing. So yes, they are very popular.
Wow, that is amazing to me that that whole genre has I guess that's always been out there. It's just you happen to plug into it, and people are intrigued.
I'm, like for the ghost part, one of the things I do is I talk about famous people that they never heard of that believe in ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of, famous people like Ronald Reagan and Abraham Lincoln and Eleanor Roosevelt, all these people. I also show them actual validated real ghost photos that kind of blow them away and go.
Mm-hmm.
So there are lots of things that they walk away going, oh, that was really kind of interesting, which is fun on my part. And then at the very end of the presentation, I talk about that I learned about all of this because of the research I did on ghosts for my books, and then do a quick little pitch and then kind of off the stage and on. So it's fun. I already have 15 scheduled for 24 and one or two already for 25.
Well, I'm so happy you were able to work us into the schedule today, because I've been wanting to hear more of the kind of behind the scenes of your writing and the whole world of publishing. And I wasn't even realizing I was going to hear about ghosts and, haunted settings that you discuss for different groups. So that's even been more of a bonus. Well, could you tell us, just thinking about future events that you might be a part of? You're telling us that you have, several speaking engagements that are on the schedule, on the calendar. I know we were talking with Michael Coyen earlier, who's the director of the museum here. And the Harmon Museum is actually going to be launching a new Lebanon event, which will be held on June 1st of this year, 2024. And it will be a celebration of the arts. It'll be, all different types of arts, be they performing arts, be they visual arts, and so on. And it's going to be encompassed right here in the 2 or 3 blocks where we're located today. So this museum will be a major part of performing arts for sure. And then there'll be more artist booths set up out, on the sidewalks and so on. The streets will be blocked off. So would you be part of something like that, do you think?
I might. I have done that in other cities. I've been, Cape May has an artist type festival that I've participated in.
Mm-hmm.
So does Crystal River, that I've done that before, and I've done when we did this at Cape May in September, it just as this blows me. In one day, I sold $2,000 worth of books.
Really?
We sold out every book I brought. I went home empty. So, which is always a wonderful thing to do. So,
sure.
So yes, I would certainly be happy to be a participant when because this is as much of an art as the pottery is.
Sure is.
The one thing that I really haven't talked about is that doing this job, starting with an idea, getting an idea to a manuscript, getting an idea to a manuscript to getting it published, getting that book someplace where people will buy that, has been a far more difficult journey than I ever imagined. Uh-huh. It's harder than any job I ever did before. It is not for the faint-hearted.
Okay.
But that's because I want to do it right. So I'm not just throwing words on paper and then sending it out there. I want to make sure that it's the very best I can do. It often requires huge amounts of rewriting, and so I'm hoping that what I actually finish with is a piece of art. It isn't just here's a good example. So I was actually I was doing an interview, doing one of these presentations, and a reporter was at the young gal, new gal, newspaper reporter. So this is about 5 years ago, and she had just read my first book, Blood on the Chesapeake, and she had said that she was so amazed at my first chapter because she's in a class where the professor was telling her what should be in the first chapter. She said, "You have everything he told us we used to have in the first chapter." I said, "You know why that is?" She said, "No." I said, "It's not my first chapter." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "That's my 15th first chapter."
Ah.
She said, "Really?" I said, "That was my 15th attempt to how do I start this book."
Oh, okay.
I said, so that's just kind of an example of what I go through to make sure that the book is as good as possible, that the story works, that people are drawn in. and that it's fun. That's,
Very good. Well, I do have to admit that I did write a book, but it was part of the Storyworth collection that you
Mhm.
can that you read about online, and I received it as a gift from my youngest son, Casey, and his wife, Lauren. And throughout that whole year, every Monday, I received a prompt online.
Okay.
And then you respond to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's more of like a journaling
Mhm.
about my life.
Okay.
And I have to say that there was a certain amount of satisfaction for me. I had not even considered writing a book, but when it came, it was hardbound. It contained photos I had submitted. It was like, I don't know, a couple hundred pages long. And I can only imagine how you feel when other people buy your book, because when I received the book I wrote, I thought, well, I can check that off my list because it's something I didn't even realize I wanted to do until I started doing it. And you kind of got the energy going once
Right.
you started the writing.
Yep.
So even me doing kind of a journaling type book, I can somewhat feel the energy and
Good.
satisfaction you must feel.
Real sense of accomplishment when
Yes.
it showed up, right? Yeah,
Yes.
it does. When
Yes.
that's delivered, when I get the first set of books show up at the house and cut them open and deliver, and you have
Right.
you're holding the product in your hand. It is an experience unlike most others. I mean,
Right.
the fact and it's a little different than other art because if you're creating the other art, it never leaves you. You know, you're finishing the pottery or you're doing the drawing or whatever. And
Right.
when you're done, you're done. Here, you do all this. You have to send it to somebody else. They have to put it all together and then send it back to you. So that event when they come back, it is pretty incredible.
Well, you probably have a team of people that help you. I mean, in terms of like getting ready for the publisher and doing the drafts and reading for, do you
Yeah.
have
I do.
people
I
that type?
remember. Well, I should probably call them out because one of
Okay.
I'm always asked, well, what advice do you have for new writers, young
Uh-huh.
writers, or forget about young, emerging writers,
Right.
regardless of the age?
Right.
And I always have two pieces of advice. The first piece of advice is they need to find a really good writing group. I've been very fortunate to be a member of it was called the Dayton Tuesday Writers Group, but we meet on Wednesday. That's a long story there.
Okay.
But and I have been with them for 8 years, 9 years,
Okay.
and their input was absolutely invaluable. They see things I would never see in the books. They find errors that I would miss. They come up with ideas that I would never have thought of that actually make the book richer and the stories more full and stuff like that. So that's the first one. And then the second advice I always give is if you're serious, if you want to be a writer, you need to get to a writing conference. You need to get to, depends on what you're writing. One of my favorites is Killer Natural. I'm one of the featured speakers this year in August. And it's for mystery, thriller, historicals, westerns, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But regardless, if you're a romance writer, there's a romance conference. If you're a nonfiction writer, there's a nonfiction. So there's always a conference because if you're a new writer, you'll find people in your like you that are just starting out. You'll find people to get advice. You'll get mentors in there. You'll learn from some of the best in the area. I've learned from Kent Kruger, from Stephanie Ivanovich, from all these famous people that you only know because you pick up their book in the store. And I got a chance to meet with them and talk to them, and they write blurbs for my book and stuff. So, it's an experience that you can't. The only way you can do that is through a writing conference.
Okay.
So that's really
good.
important advice. If you're serious and you want to really learn, that's the way to start.
Well, I think that my passion is for promoting other people who are writing, and that's why I love to invite guests like you, who people may or may not know, and they may know you from your school and administration profession, but they would be like, "Well, I didn't even know that you were." You were an author.
I get
so
that all the
forth.
time from
Yeah.
the districts I've worked
Right,
in. Yeah.
right, right. So I'm just delighted that you could spend this time with us today. And if there's any final thoughts or things on the agenda, I guess we talked about June 1st, 2024. Circle that date on your calendar because you might be a participant. I probably will be a patron, and I will be buying things from artists. And I'm looking forward to that festival because I just love the arts, and I love sharing opportunities with our audience so that they could enjoy the arts as well. And you must come to this museum, don't you agree?
Well,
It's a gem.
If you have not been to this museum recently, if it's been a few years, you are missing an incredible
Yes.
opportunity. It's just around every corner in this building. There's something else to uncover and there. I happen to like ancient Indian history, and their collection of ancient Indian artifacts rivals anybody's. So if that's something that floats your boat, and when they had the dresses that were here, my kids loved that. So kind of like whatever you're kind of interested in from a historical perspective, you're going to find it here.
I know we talked to Michael Coyen before we started our interview today, and we will feature him in the next month or so because there's really so much to talk about, and we only have a few more minutes to allot for an interview that we really should give full length time to. So we will plan on interviewing Michael Coyen, but as I mentioned, best of luck in your future endeavors, and I will look forward to seeing you at a Miami University lifelong learning presentation as well, because we are putting together, our spring session is in April, and we already have the catalog out for all the classes, bigger, more classes than ever.
That's great.
And then October will be our fall session, and that's when we would ask you if you could come back and be a presenter again over at the VOA Learning Center in Westchester, because everyone just enjoyed it so much. You brought your books with it. You not only spoke to us about your books, but you had copies of your book there, and we could see what you were referring to, when you would show illustrations and talk about different parts of the book. So
it was a great audience. I enjoyed sharing with them. I look forward to going back and
good.
And coming back again.
Good. We'll look forward to it. And we hope that you are circling the dates on your calendar, you're taking notes, and if you're thinking about writing books, you've got a few words of wisdom from someone who has journeyed on that road. So we hope that you have a good day and that you're feeling good. Bye for now.